For this class, we will introduce the OSPF authentication experiment. So for the OSPF authentication, we have the interface authentication and we have the area authentication. So here in this lab, we will do these two kinds of authentication. The background for this lab is a complaints network operates on the OSPF protocol. So here we can see the topology. We have two routers here, right? And to enhance network security, the company plans to enable OSPF authentication. So the administrator can do the authentication on two routers. And here, for this topology, we enable the OSPF protocol and then set the area to become the backbone area. So the area ID is area 0. And for the purpose of this lab is the first master OSPF authentication methods. So we have introduced this, right? And then to master the OSPF authentication encryption methods. So the first encryption is a clear text, and the second encryption is a ciphertext. Okay, so the two methods we will configure on our lab environment. And next, we will see the requirements. So the R1 and R2 are connected through the 12.0.01. So the segment is 30. And another is the 12.0.0.2, and the net mask is 30. Okay, the management address is configured on the loopback 10. So for the R1, we use the loopback 10. The format is a 1.1.1.1, and for R2, the loopback 10 address is the 2.2.2. So we will configure on R1 and R2. Next is the R1 and R2 established OSPF neighbors using the following authentication method. First, actually, the interface, and second is area, right? And for the interface, and we have two methods. First is the clear text authentication. Okay, so we will enable the authentication on the interface gigabit 0 on R1 and R2. The password we use the Ruijie. And the second way for interface authentication is a ciphertext. We also use the password Ruijie. Okay. And another way for authentication is area. And for area-based authentication, actually we have to enable the function on the OSPF process and then to set the password Ruijie on interface. Okay. And next is the ciphertext authentication with the authentication password Ruijie. So the operation is the same. Okay, and enable the authentication on area and then to set the password on interface. So this is the requirements. So here we will do 4 labs, right? Use one topology. Okay. So for the configuration plane, we can see first we have to complete the IP address configuration, include the logic interface and the physical interface. And after this, we will complete the OSPF basic configuration and to set the OSPF process ID and set the root ID. Maybe you can skip this step, okay? And to network the IP address information into the area 0, okay? And the next is the complete authentication configuration. We have to enable the authentication on interface or on area and then set the authentication passwords. Okay, so this is the configuration plane. So next is the procedure. So here we will follow this procedure and then we will do this command on our environment. Okay. So here we power on all the device and then go to the R1 device. Okay. And wait a minute. Okay, now we enable to the device and modify this device host name. Okay, and then we will configure the IP address. So first we will create the loopback 10 and set the IP address is 111.1 and 32. Okay, and after this we set the gigabit 0. The IP address is 12.0.0.1. Okay, and use the 24. Okay, after this, we will go to the R2 device and create the loopback and set the IP address 12.2.33 and the interface gigabit 0 and set the IP address. Okay, after this, we can modify the host name and ping test. Okay, so it means the direct connection is okay. After this, we can configure the OSPF basic configuration. And now we go to the R1 device. And router OSPF 1 and network 101.1 to the area 0. So here we don't have the special area, we don't have other area, we just have the backbone area. So we just a network or the interface to area 0. Okay, and network the 12th the segment to the area 0. Okay, next device is R2 device, and we enable the OSPF and set the process ID is 1. And then network the 2.2.2 and 0, area 0. Okay, this is the configuration for basic. So now we can check the OSPF configuration, show IP OSPF neighbor. Okay, wait a minute. And we have to network the physical IP address into the OSPF, right? And network 12.0.0 and the 0. Okay. So we can show run to see the configuration. Okay. So the configuration here is okay. And after this, we can use show IP OSPF neighbor to see the neighbor relationship. Show IP OSPF neighbor. And we can see the relationship between R1 and R2 built successfully, right? So it's a full state. So after this, actually, we have built the OSPF configuration, and then the neighbor relationship can work between each other. And now we have to do the authentication. First is the interface-based clear text authentication. So here is the interface authentication. So first we have to go to the interface mode. So for R1 device, and we go to the interface gigabit 0 and enable the authentication is the IP OSPF authentication function. And for the R2 is the same. Okay. And now if we don't do the authentication on R2 device, okay, and we can see this tip is a received hello packet from 111 where the gigabit 0. Okay, for this peer, the authentication tab is mismatched. So now if we don't do the interface authentication on gigabit 0, we can wait some minutes and see the neighbor relationship. Okay, we can see the show IP OSPF neighbor. We will see there isn't the neighbor relationship between R1 and R2 because the authentication tab mismatch. And we enable the authentication on R1, but we haven't do the authentication on R2. So this is the reason. So now we go to the R2 and ending to the gigabit 0 and enable the OSPF authentication. Okay, now we just wait for some minutes and we can see the nodes is done to init the hello receipt. It means we will build the neighbor relationship again. And now we will see the state is from the loading to 4. So we can check the OSPF neighbor again and we can see the right state. Okay, so next we will set the OSPF authentication key. So first we go to the R1 and the IP OSPF authentication key 0. It means the clear text, right? And set the password is Ruijie. So after this, we wait some minutes and we can see the notes is the authentication error. It's another note, right? So before we received the authentication tab mismatch, it means R1 has the authentication, but R2 don't have, right? But now the another note is the authentication error. It means the R1 has the password, but the R2 don't have the password. Maybe the R1 has one password and the R2 has another password. So the password is mismatched. It will lead this tip will show on our screen. Okay. So now we go to the R2 device and see the neighbor relationship. So we also can see there isn't no relationship between R1 and R2. So now we go to the interface gigabit 0 and set the OSPF message key is a 0 and the password is Ruijie. Okay, IP OSPF authentication key and 0 Ruijie. Okay, now we wait for some minutes and we can see the R1 and R2 build the neighbor relationship again, right? So now we can see the OSPF relationship is a 4 state. So it means the R1 and R2 can build the neighbor relationship successfully, right? So this is the interface-based clear text. So actually for the interface-based cyber text is the same. Okay, it's the same. So we just do the operation on R1 and R2. Okay, so for R1, and we go to the gigabit 0 and no IP OSPF authentication key 0. Okay, and for R2 is the same. This gigabit 0 and no IP OSPF authentication key 0. Okay. Now we have enabled the authentication for cyber text. So now we set the IP OSPF message digits key 1. So we have to change the authentication way. Okay. No IP OSPF authentication. And then go to R2, no IP OSPF authentication. And then we will do the new option on this environment. And first, we have to enable the OSPF authentication, right? But now we can see it's another comment. And the comment will add the message digits. It means we will use the cyber text. Okay. So interface gigabit 0. And then IP OSPF authentication, we don't choose the keychain and the long. We use the message digest. Okay. And after this, we can see the authentication tab mismatch this tip, right? And now we enable the ciphertext authentication on R2. So it's IP-OSPF authentication message digest. So after we configure this, we can wait for some minutes and see the neighbor shape. Okay, so the relationship is okay and show IP-OSPF neighbor. We can see the state is full, right? So now we have to set the password. The IP-OSPF message digest key is a 1, and then use the MD5 and set the password is a Ruijie. Okay, and we can see the authentication error. And then we go to the R2 device. Of course, it's the same. Go to the gigabit 0 and set the password. The IP OSPF message key is 0 and use MD5. Encryption, and set the password is a Ruijie. So after this, also we can wait for some minutes and to see the label relationship. Show IP OSPF neighbor. Okay, it's also successful. So after this, actually we finished the interface-based clear text and finished the interface-based cyber text authentication, this two-way. But this two-way is just for interface. If we want to build the authentication between the area, right? Between area, we have to do the area-based. So for the area best, we also have two ways. First is the clear text, and second is the cyber text. So it's the same. So first we have to delete the authentication configuration on R1 and R2. So go to R1 and then enter to the gigabit 0 and no IP OSPF message, digits key is 1, right? And go to R2. Of course, gigabit 0 and no IP OSPF message digits the key 1. And then to disable the IP OSPF authentication message digits, okay. So enable the IP OSPF authentication and then no IP OSPF authentication. Okay, after this, actually, we disable the authentication function on our interface, and now we have to do the area authentication. So now we will go to the area. So for R1, and we go to the root OSPF 1, right? And then enable the authentication on area 0. So we'll set the area 0 authentication and wait for some minutes. We can see the tip is authentication type mismatch, right? It's because the area authentication is enabled on R1, but we haven't do the authentication on R2. So now we can enable this function on R2 device. So root OSPF 1 and set the area 0 authentication. So after this, the neighbor relationship will build again. So here is the for state, right? So the relationship is the for, okay. After this, we have to set the password for the clear text authentication. So now we have go to the interface, okay, we have go to the interface. So here is the area best. We also have to set the password on interface. And interface gigabit 0. And the IP OSPF authentication, we use the clear text, so the authentication key is the 0. Okay, you can use the 0. 0 is means an encryption tab. So key is the 0 and set the password is a Ruijie. And also we can see the neighbor relationship we are broke down. Okay. After this, we have to set the password on R2 device, and we go to the interface gigabit 0, and then set the IP OSPF authentication key is 0. It means the clear text, and set the password is a Ruijie. So now wait for a minute and see the show IP OSPF neighbor. Okay. So now the relationship is okay. So this is the air-based clear text authentication, right? And after this, we have to do the area-based cyber text authentication. So first we have to delete the configuration on R1. So it's a no IP OSPF authentication key. Okay. And then other device interface gigabit 0 no IP OSPF authentication key. Okay. And for the area-based clear text and the area-based cyber text, the authentication function, we have to enable the comment for OSPF process is not different. So we have to disable the area 0 authentication on R1 and R2. So we go to the OSPF 1 and then no IP OSPF, no area 0 and authentication. Okay. And for the R2, it's the same. Okay, after this, we will do the area-based cyber text authentication. First, we also have to go to the R1 and then into the OSPF process and do the area 0 authentication. But now we have to select the message digits this way. Okay. So this is the cyber text authentication way. And then other device is R2. We add into the OSPF 1 and the area 0 authentication message digits. Now we haven't configured any password information on two devices, right? But the neighbor relationship will build again. So it's the 4 states, right? And now we will configure the password information on interface. So we go to the interface gigabit 0 and set the IP OSPF message digits because we use the ciphertext V on area. So now we have ending to the IP OSPF message key. We also have to use the key 1 because the 1, the message digits key, we use the key 1 and then the MD5 V and set the password is a Ruijie. Okay. So it's the same operation on R2 device. The internet gigabit 0 and then set the IP OSPF authentication is message digit key and the key ID also is a 1 and use the MD5V and then set the password is a Ruijie. Okay, it's the same password. If you type the wrong password on R2, so the R1 and R2 will break down. So now we can see the relationship between the R1 and R2. The state is a 4. Okay, so it means the area-based ciphertext is okay. So this is the authentication for OSPF. Okay, so now we can see the verification. And for the first, inconsistent authentication, encryption, and password settings on R1 and R2. So as shown in the following figure, can cause authentication features. So in OSPF neighbors established features, so we will see all the authentication features here, right? It's maybe the authentication type mismatch or the authentication error. The authentication type mismatch means maybe I enable the authentication, but you don't enable the authentication. Or another way, I use the cipher text and you use the clear text. This is the authentication type mismatch. So for another is the authentication error. It means maybe I use the Ruijie to be the password, but you use the 1234 as your password. So our password is different. So it's made cause the authentication mismatch. So the second is the authentication, encryption, and password settings on R1 and R2 are consistent, enabling successfully relation establishment. So it's the same. So we can see the show IP OSPF neighbors and show the 4 state is the correct state for OSPF neighbors. So maybe we will make some scenario and the 2 neighbor counts build the relationship and we can use show IP OSPF neighbors and to see the neighbor relationship. So maybe we can see the tip on our screen like this, right? Like this, authentication type mismatch and authentication error. So now we can use the command to see the configuration. Okay, like the show running configure to see the OSPF configuration and show IP OSPF neighbor to see the neighbor relationship. Okay, so this is the verification. So all the operation we have done on the environment. Next is the key points. So regardless of whether interface-based or the area-based authentication is used, the password must be configured through the corresponding interface. So it means if we want to configure the interface-based, so we have to enable the authentication function on our interface, right? But for the area-based authentication, we have to enable the authentication function on area. So we have to add into the OSPF process, right? And for two ways to do the authentication, we have to set the password. And for the interface based, we have go to the interface such as the interface gigabit 0, and we set the password. And for the area-based authentication, we also have to add into the interface, like the interface gigabit 0, and set the password. Okay, so this is the key points for us to do the OSPF authentication. That's all for this class. Thank you for your watching.